Welcome, everyone, to Talking Back to Suicide. My name is Dr. Diane Kaufman. I prefer to be called Diana for my creative self. And I'm a poet, artist, retired child psychiatrist, and the founder director of the Hold On campaign for suicide prevention that uses the power of art to educate, connect, express, and heal. And I'm here today with co host Kino Isaac, music producer,
Hi.
entrepreneur, DJ, and an advocate, mental health advocate for independent artists, and our special guest, Pat Black-Gould. So, Pat's life journey integrates artistic expression and healing in transformative ways. She's a PhD psychologist and an award winning author whose clinical and creative work shine a light on empathy, resilience, and inclusion. Pat has been an actress, director, and playwright in New York, and later produced summer stock and murder mystery theater in Maine. She once ran a New York based theater company directing inner city youth and summer stock productions. As a mental health professional, Pat designed a suicide prevention program incorporating psychodrama and role play. She has worked with Vietnam veterans, served as LGBTQ plus veteran program coordinator, and provided psychological care within forensic hospitals and men's correctional facilities. She co-authored important academic work on mental health and cultural deafness with Dr. Neil Glickman, an experience that continues to this day to inform her being an advocate for underrepresented voices. Pat is the author of The Crystal Beads, a gold medal award winning book inspired by a true story on a child experiencing the Holocaust. She co authored with Steve Hardiman the award winning and 5-star reviewed All the Broken Angels, a coming of age story set in the USA's turbulent 1960s and 1970s. About her many writings, Pat explains, quote, "My stories explore what it means to grow through change, to reach across divides, and to find strength in unexpected places." So, warm welcome to you, Pat, to Talking Back to Suicide.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with both of you. I appreciate it.
Quite an
I'm
introduction.
I'm so eager to learn about your life story and what seeds were planted that blossomed in and how they were planted that ended up blossoming in so many meaningful ways to yourself, to your patients, to those who read your books, performed in your plays. So please start wherever you would like.
Oh gosh, where do I listened to that and I'm wondering, did I really fit that in? Is that why I'm so tired now? How did I do all that? I didn't think when I was younger and going through my various different careers, and those are just some of them, that things would tie in. I always thought of things as separate. I'm doing this now, I'm doing this. And sometimes I had to switch because financial reasons or other reasons, but I never thought that they would somehow join together. And they did. My interest when I was younger was in the theater world in New York, and that's really, when I look back at it now, I don't think I thought of it then when I went to mental health, is you're really exploring what's inside us, what's inside our soul, who we are, what makes people tick. And a lot of theater, in some ways, I think I ended up playing therapist, especially when I was working with kids or teenagers who were going through struggles. I was there for them and listening to them without even realizing I was doing some therapeutic roles, and just connecting with people in ways that I wasn't sure why, because I didn't come from that background. but it just clicked. And I love the theater world. I love the creativity. I was shy growing up, so something in theater let me find my tribe, my people, my group that I can connect with. And usually, and some folks that can pop up into theater are those who have other types of struggles in life, or finding that place where they don't quite fit someplace else, or it's a little off the beaten path, just in many ways. And so, I've met a lot of people with incredibly diverse backgrounds and histories, and some trauma histories and everything. And I enjoyed and loved it. But financially, it's hard. Theater's hard. And when I decided to make a switch, I had no clue what to switch to. And truthfully, what happened is I opened up a college catalog and went through the pages and went, oh, I got my degree first in MA first in therapy. So I was a mental health counselor first. I go, oh, well, it's kind of like theater. So it's what got me into exploring mental health counseling. And then at the age of like 46, I went back and got my doctorate in psychology. And I love the fact, Diana, that you do your work and everything and utilize the poetry and the expressive arts and the things that turned into music and songs. It's fantastic. And that, reaching people here and not just here. And I think that's what the arts does. It digs deeper than where you alone can go. I think we can, to some degree, get to here, but there's something about the pull of the expressive arts that pulls people deeper into their experiences and does better in helping people learn more and deal with their situations. So I moved into that world, and I did a lot of expressive arts work in theater and psychodrama while working individuals and groups. And when I semi-retired, I moved down to Florida and just started writing in fiction and semi-autobiographical work and historical fiction, and incorporated that growth and that resilience through trauma in my stories. So that's how it just all came to being. And I would never have thought that along the way that it would fit, because I felt a severe loss in my life when I gave up theater. It was the hardest thing. It was my soul. It was my passion. I didn't realize you can have more than one passion. And slowly I realized that you really can. You can kind of have a couple of them. So I learned that as part of the process.
So when you were a child, or within your immediate family or extended family, were there artistic, creative parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, grandparents? No.
No. I didn't really know that world at all. It was blue collar, working family, factory worker mother, fireman dad. And I just fell in love with early movies, and when I see those old 8 millimeter films that we used to have back then, and I didn't even realize I did this. I would be having my friends do dance routines. Now, I didn't study dance. I knew nothing about it, but I'd be lining them up and having them do these movements. I'd always be directing them or acting out. I think I got into the real old black and white movies and saw myself doing theater, and would be just, I must have been like no more than 5. And I'm lining people up and I'm going, you're going to turn this way now. You're going to move here. You're going to, where it came from, I don't, it just, that was it. So there was nothing from the family that was there.
In your, I don't know, elementary, middle, high school, were there teachers who recognized your creative abilities, or were there clubs? I'm just trying to follow the breadcrumbs of
it is kind of weird, but no, actually, and I wrote about this in All the Broken Angels, which is semi-autobiographical. There was something that happened that stopped my creativity. I remember it was about third or fourth grade, and our roles at them when we would do an art project, we would get a mimeograph sheet of paper, and it was Thanksgiving, so we had a mimeograph sheet of paper of a turkey, and I sat in the back of the room, and the nun who I had was in the front of the room, and she colored the turkey and put it up on the board. Okay. Well, I sat in the back, and I was one who tended to ask a lot of questions, but you weren't allowed to ask questions, so you get in trouble for asking questions. So I looked at that turkey and I said, I think it's supposed to be purple. So I painted the body of the turkey purple, which I thought was really like, okay, it's close to a brown, right? And I couldn't really see. And I got pulled up by my hair, put in the front of the room, and just viciously just attacked over my purple turkey. So I remember taking my box of Crayola crayons, which I had at home, and my coloring book, and not doing anything artistic again. Again, I never touched art again. Actually, I turned into also being a polymer clay jewelry designer, and over the last maybe 10 or 15 years, which was the first time I ever would do anything artistically. So no, there was nothing. If anything, I was inhibited, and that plus the shyness kept me out of doing anything until acting classes like in New York, and then majoring in theater in college. So I pulled back from anything. I didn't go audition for anything. We did once a year
first I want to
plays.
say I feel so badly for that young girl that you were with your purple Thanksgiving turkey. Oh my God. How beautiful you made that turkey. Wow.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And I had the grammar in the story say that, every one of us has purple turkeys in our lives. Every one of us can be a part of that and experience what it's like to think outside of the box, because that's what we need, and that's the same way that I try to push the clients, or whatever that might mean to you. So I learned a lot from it, not in the way I expected, but I've incorporated that.
What happened that you ended up taking acting classes, and how old were you when that happened, and what prompted that?
I just remember having a friend in high school say that she wanted to take an acting class in New York, and I wasn't going to college then. We didn't have anybody in our family go to college. I was born of the age where girls went to college only to get their MRS degrees, their Mrs. degrees. So there was not even the thought of college. You went to work. And you try to step out of blue collar work, and you go into white collar work, which was like their typist or secretary or something at nature. So that's what I did. But I remember my high school friends saying there's classes in New York at a studio called Herbert Berghoff. I just walked in there and started taking acting classes. Nervous and shy, I managed to bring myself there, and then eventually said, I think I'm going to go to college, and I think I'm going to major in theater, much to the dismay of my folks who majors in theater. And then I found my people.
And you went to college in New York,
It took
or was
that
that?
long.
Say it again.
I went to college in Jersey City, New Jersey,
Oh,
New Jersey, which is just across the river from New York
sure.
City. And because it was just across the river, it pulled in actors and directors and producers that would do workshops or teach classes. So we were trained by a lot of New York people, which was really cool. So we had the experience of understanding New York theater
So
a
what was
lot
the
from them,
reaction?
as well as
What
the
was
teachers that we.
what was the reaction of your parents when you said, "I want to go into the theater"?
Um, Not happy, because I'm supposed to go to have my work for a few years, get married, and be home and raise kids. So that's they didn't quite understand it. My dad never came to my plays. I don't think it was because he was so upset about it. I think it was more, well, he was very hard of hearing from World War II. And so he couldn't understand stuff. He had a problem sitting still. Mom would come to some of them and go, oh, yeah, you might be okay, but those other actors, this one was good, that one was good.
How did you handle that? I'm just thinking it must have been disappointing.
It was, yeah, I would say there was a bit of a sadness in that because I was hoping she would honor that or at least see it. Later years, when I ran the summer stock theater and everything, they would come and they would see those things. But it wasn't the role I was supposed to have. So that made it harder. It wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. But it was hard. It was hard. And I wish they could have lived a lot longer. My mother used to come. I used to do murder mystery theater. And my mom used to come to those productions and hang out with the actors and have fun. So so she appreciated that.
Now, earlier on, you used the phrase acting out. And I was struck because, acting out, what in clinical terms can mean sort of acting out something negative, right? But on the other hand, acting it out in a safe way can be very healing.
Yes.
And sometimes we do
Yes.
too much acting in, like there's an inner battle going on. And if only we expressed it in a healing way, we would be helped, you know? So tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about
Yeah. Yeah.
your career in the arts.
Um, I'm one that, and this is also what I try to talk to clients about, you know, is I would never want to sort of settle and say, "Ooh, I'm going to be an actress," because as soon as I was an actress, I says, "What if I directed? What if I produced? What if I was a playwright?" So I never took the role I had and felt like that was quite exactly where I wanted to stop. I always said, I want to know the big picture. There's more. There is end. There's this, and there's this, which I think with clients, try to say, don't be afraid to just explore. You might love what you're doing, and that's fine, but allow yourself to also open more doors and see what else might be out there. So I like New York theater. I had an inner city theater company, which I really enjoyed for kids. Didn't get paid at all, but it allowed me to bring kids from various different neighborhoods, coming into act out in a good way and find their voice um, creatively because there weren't that many outlets for them. So I was fortunate enough to have a small studio that a veteran actually owned at that time that gave me a space on West 28th Street where I could do whatever I wanted, be it shows, be it whatever was going on, acting classes. So I did that. I taught at a YMCA, and just to let kids see other things in their life other than what they might have struggles with. And it was the safe space. It was the creative, safe space for them to take that journey and grow from it. So that meant a lot to
When,
me. That meant a lot to me.
when you had that studio space, right? How did you recruit young people to participate in the acting and the theater productions?
I oddly enough, it was so long ago. I'm not exactly sure what pulled people in. We had ads in various different newspapers, I recall, and I think teachers somehow found out about me and would send some kids. So I would have my Saturday workshops, and they just sort of found me, and I didn't do much. It's possible that Ron, who ran the studio, might have done that. However, go around. The other thing that I was a professional mime. I went to mime school for a year out in Wisconsin, and I had a mime troupe as well as a theater troupe, and we would go around to classrooms in different schools and do workshops. And I would also work with the teachers on creative movement in the classroom. So I'm thinking maybe back then, from what my memory wants to call in, I'm thinking that that could have pulled some people in back at that time, to create that and get that running.
And it feels to me that was this a passion of your heart, the outreach and reaching young people, versus were you doing it more so for economic reasons?
Well, there sure was no money in it. I never charged on those classes.
I thought so. Yeah.
I never charged. I never charged. I did, with the YMCA, I got a small salary and everything, but everything that I did related to going out to the classrooms with me, my troupe and everything, we never got paid. The studio, we charged maybe pennies for a show. The Y, I did a summer camp, and I was able to get kids to put on productions and everything. I might have gotten paid for that, but in general, you're an actor in New York doing small shows off Broadway. You're not going to get paid, so you're always finding your other ways to support each other on top of that. So you had your job plus whatever. And actually, my book that is going to coming out, is going to get finished writing, is going to cover this aspect of my life and everything. So I really want to cover. I'm going to be looking at trying to bring that world together there to show, to incorporate that in there. But you're trying to make it with, as everyone in New York would tend to do when you're not on Broadway, is you're piecing ends together. And it was usually in arts administration. I'd be secretary for various different companies. I worked with performing artists for nuclear disarmament way back in the 80s. So I worked with various different performing groups in an administrative role, often as well. Piecemealing everything together to do your passion, which you don't get paid for.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the name of a children's book, and I feel bad that I can't remember the name of the author right now, but it was called Harold and the Purple Crayon. Do you know that story?
No.
So, but because I'm linking it with your purple turkey,
I gotta
right?
check it out.
Yeah, it's a very simple but very deep picture book of, I think, a child using the purple crayon to draw different things. Right? We'll have to look up Harold and the Purple Crayon.
Yes.
And I'm thinking
Yes.
maybe one of the seeds that were planted for you, but you had it in fertile soil, was when the nun was angry at you for your purple turkey. Right?
I think
I don't know,
so.
maybe it flourished in all your work with children and helping them to be who they are and express themselves.
I think so, because when you come from that rigid school system, I mean, it's what we knew back then. It's what there was. Everything was contained. You don't think outside of the box. Things only were as they needed to be, and you were quiet and you did what you had to do. So there was no self-expression. So I hid that in one way, but at home, like I said, I don't want to say bounce off the walls in that ADHD way, even though I think there's probably some of that. I would just create dramatic scenes for myself. And then in the classroom, I'd shut down and be in this little box again, and then come home and step out of it and then go back. So back and forth.
I can remember, Pat, when I was a girl, and I still have this thanks to my mom, who saved so many of my, quote, writings or artistic things as a kid. But I was young, I don't know, maybe I was like 9 years old or something. And it was only a few sentences long, but it was a very dramatic scene of a woman dying. Okay? So maybe it's 5 sentences or 6 sentences. And in big red letters across diagonally across what I wrote, were my teacher's words, which were, "This is not a short story." And, it's like,
Wow.
oh my goodness,
Wow.
you couldn't say that in a more caring way, or say, "Good for you for writing this. Now write more." We want to know more
Oh,
about what happened before, but it's so
wow.
easy to shut down a child. And it's, even thinking about it makes me feel sad for the little girl that I was with the big red letters. This is not a short story.
Oh,
Okay.
this is not, oh, yeah. So you know what
The
that,
same thing as for you, it was like, that is not a turkey.
yeah,
That's not an
yeah,
acceptable turkey.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. And when you shut that off, yeah, because that part of us is part of who we are, what we do, what we are imagining ourselves to be and become. So where do you go other than to just sort of just close in and find those outlets? And how did you get past that?
Um, well, I'm smiling because I don't know the timeline of this, right? Whether it was before or after, but and it shows sort of how you don't know how your life is going to unfold, right? Yeah,
Hmm.
right. So I'm
Yep.
going to I'm going to say something that occurred in April 2025, this year, right? In my 72nd year of life, I received the Outstanding Achievement Award in Outstanding Achievement Award from the National Association for Poetry Therapy.
Oh,
However, okay, so that's in 2025. But going back, flipping through the decades in the past, when I was a young girl, and I don't know if this was before what I told you or after, I plagiarized a poem as an elementary school student that also received an award, of which
oh,
I ended up getting caught.
oh
And there was a big fallout in my family
no.
from what I had done. And I had actually
Oh,
done it twice. But fortunately, that second one didn't get an award. So no one, but, but my stealing of the poem, a creative work, I stole it from somebody called Anonymous. So,
oh,
so I don't know if I understood what the word anonymous meant,
oh.
but if I did, I guess I was doing a good deed, right, by
Mhm,
claiming the
mhm.
poem. Um,
Yeah.
and so you asked me how did I cope in some way? I guess I had a strong need to express myself, but didn't feel that
Yep.
I had it in me to do it. I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
When it was interesting because when I accepted this Outstanding Achievement Award, because I hearkened back to who could have imagined that I would be receiving this after my youth and what I had done.
Mhm.
And the one of the keynote speakers shared when I think he had spoken, and I think that then I spoke, and he shared out loud to the group. He said that he would have been honored to have someone plagiarize his poem with that story in mind, right?
Oh, wow. Wow. And so you picked
But
a
it's
heck of a
interesting
poem.
how do you keep the flame of your authentic
Yeah.
self, which must be a creative self because it's creating itself. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
right to
Yeah.
be an artist, to be
Yeah.
a jewelry maker or a poet or a musician, could be, but the very self
Mhm.
that we are is being created and unfolded, and we're playing a part in that. So how do we keep that alive? You know?
Yeah.
What
And
what
and
are
if
you
we're
thinking?
isolated,
Yeah, go on, Pat.
no, I was just gonna say, and if we're isolated, and not having other people or other connections with folks as kids who are sharing, having those shared experiences. It's I think even harder because, I don't know how it was for you, but I was so quiet and so shy otherwise that I didn't know anyone artistic or didn't know anybody that would do those things. My few friends that I had tolerated my putting them in dancers and 8mm films, but we never talked about it. They just did what I told them to do. But I didn't share that with them. We didn't talk about it. We didn't do it together, kind of. So we didn't have like that creative team. So when there's isolation too, it's even harder. Because am I the odd one? Because I'm doing something that others aren't doing. Is there something the matter with me that I'm not following a different path or the path that others want for me? The kind of questions you ask yourself sometimes.
And if you step out of line, literally and figuratively, is somebody going to get mad at me? Are they going to criticize me? Or shout at me, insult me?
Yeah.
All sorts of things. Because it's interesting because to show up for ourselves, right? You have to put a face on it. It's interesting what the language says, but you have to put a face on it, right? And the face on it is your face, and now people are going to recognize you. So there's what joy in doing that, but there's also tremendous risk. And then how do we negotiate that risk, or how do we tolerate it or appreciate it or say the risk is worth it? And at the same time, how do we keep ourselves safe emotionally?
Yes.
Wait, Kino, you're an artist too. What are your thoughts about all this?
No, the two of you are like completely 1000% right. Listening to the two of you, I can also relate to it. But just really quickly, on the educational system, doesn't matter which country it is, it's a government institution, and these institutions, the schools, are not meant or designed for us to express ourselves. It's designed for us to obey. So the moment you step outside that box, automatically you're told there's something wrong with you, psychologically. So now they want to treat you for that, it happens, and I want to make a point, like Pat, when you were talking about your parents, like I face the same sort of situation with my parents when I told them I want to be a DJ. That's where it started off. I want to be a DJ. That's what I want to do for a living, and then you get that look. But I just want to get a message across to listeners, especially young creators that are listening to the show, who are probably sitting at home right now and feeling depressed because my mother and father don't believe in me, and they're shouting at me because I told them I want to be an artist, or I want to be an author, or I want to be a DJ like Kino, and not in all cases, but majority of cases, it's not because your parents don't love you, right? You need to understand that. At first, I should also, get upset about it and depressed about it because I'm so in love with music and it's all I want to do. Like what you were saying, Pat, when you're in the classroom, you're in that box. As soon as you get home, you're out there. I was the same. At school, I was in the box. When I got home, I was on my computer, I was mixing up tracks. That's what kept me alive. But where I'm getting at here is I don't want young creators to feel like, your parents don't love you. It's just that they don't understand as yet. But we're making progress with that. As the years unfold, we're making progress with parents. And I mean, my parents, they love me. They just want to do what was best for me. So just for young creators out there, your parents, you have to realize, which is what I realized later on, is that they come from a different generation. They come from a generation where it was, okay, I had to go to school, I had to go to college or university, I had to get a job, I had to work, I had to get married, I had to have a family, I had to go buy a house, I had to buy a car, can't afford, it's a different generation. So I understood that later on. But the moment I I started proving to them as a DJ and then started hosting my own events, which I converted into a business, then they like sort of got it, Then they started promoting my work and sharing it. And they were proud of those accomplishments because I showed, this actually can work. Yeah, right now in 2025, they still are skeptical about certain things that I do, even being a podcaster. Like, what's a podcaster? How does a podcaster earn a living? That's what comes to mind first. How are you earning a living of podcasting? And then you have to explain to them, no, it's a component of what I do. But, it doesn't always work out, like how a salary works out, being in a regular job where you're getting paid weekly or you're getting paid monthly. So, you need to like explain that to them as a young creator. Like, look, this is how it works, So the message, is that not that your parents don't love you. As I said, not in all cases, but majority of cases, it's just they don't understand yet. So sometimes even though you're the kid, sit down with your parents and show them, hey mom, hey dad, check this out, this is how it works, explain to them the nature of it. And then what I've learned is that they slowly understand it. They can be still skeptical at times, but they'll still sort of like start believing in you now and what you're attempting to do as a creative. And then they see the impact, that they're making. It's like, Diana, when you wrote the testimonial about me and then I posted the testimonial, my mother was like, wow, now they're starting to understand, they're starting to understand, so because some creatives, young creatives out there still in school are suffering from mental illness because of this. Because they're not getting the support from their mother, their father, their siblings, their friends. So they give up on themselves. Sooner or later, you will find it again. But unfortunately, we're living in this era where the kids of today are not as strong as we used to be. So, the chances of now them attempting suicide is high, versus when Kino was going through that with his family. And that's what we need to watch out for. That's where the education with parents needs to play a huge role. They also need to, pay attention to their children, on what do they love? Why do they love doing this?
Right.
Sit down with them, let them explain. So yeah, I guess we all share that, Now you see the connection between all creators globally. All may not be the same story, but there's a lot of similarities when we were all young. You really think about it, all that's been discussed here. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out. Pat, also what I wanted to say is when you said at the start of the show, you never know that one could have so many passions. But the thing about you is all of your passions complemented each other. Like I believe, you can truly be passionate about, one thing, which is the arts itself. But no matter what you did with your life, it always, led back to the arts. So it all complemented.
Which like I said, I wasn't aware of that. And you're right. It did complement it. And when you're giving up something you love so passionately, in a way, I initially, I think I shut the door on theater. Like I would not attend a theater performance. I never did. And to this day, I still struggle because, that of losing that, even though when I work, my work is and my writing is just super creative. And in psychology, I used all of the arts and everything. It's like I almost at first didn't let it in because I was grieving the loss. And then I realized, because I'd be working with people that were dealing with depression, that was dealing with suicide, and I wanted to find a way in. And if you don't mind, if I could share a quick story on something that I did in a, is that okay? All right. So I was working in an intensive outpatient setting, which means that people usually come there from like about 9 o'clock to like 3 in the afternoon. 5 days a week. And usually these are people that are struggling with suicidal ideation thoughts. It's more, the mental health conditions are more severe than just, and what they're dealing with is more severe than just needing the once a week therapist or something. Okay. And it was what's called an IOP, intensive outpatient. Okay. It's actually my first day on the job at this place. And I had worked in other hospitals before too, and I had been just doing what I had to do. And we're in group. And to me, group therapy is like my passion, especially groups, because you move away from that isolation. Oh, I'm the only one that this could be happening to. Very much so. We isolate through all of this and we don't connect that. And so that pulls us even in closer to ourselves and tighter in. So we were doing in group, we were talking about group, and we were talking about just that part of you that wants to go towards that suicide. And nobody would miss me. Nobody would miss me. Nobody would care. Nobody would care. If I went, nobody would care. My parents would be happy. My brother would be happy. So out of the blue, I said, we're going to try something. And I just said, oh my God, I could even get fired for this. I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just creating. I said, we're going to do something. I said to the one person who was saying, nobody cares, nobody cares. I said, okay, what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you to do a favor. I had to pull her aside first and ask her if she was willing to do this first. Okay.
And the age, were these youth or
adults? Yeah, 18 up, but definitely adults. And we're going to create a funeral. It's going to be your funeral. I had to get everybody to agree to say, we're going to do this setting. Is everybody comfortable? Are we safe? I made sure staff, I had some staff with me. And what you're going to do is you're not going to say anything, but these are all going to be different people in your funeral. But what I need you to do is ask, to say who's in your life. Who's your mother? Who's your father? Who's a cousin? Who's a sibling? Who's a husband, wife? And just mention a little bit about them. And then I would have people pick the different roles and they'd play those roles. And I'd put them in the funeral and I asked, so the person can't speak. I said, would you now talk about how important this person is in your life? And they just started talking. And the woman, after we finished the exercise, went, that's what my mother would say. That's my father. That's what they would say. And there was something about that exercise. And I truthfully, I had no idea. I'm the world of improv. I'm used to doing this. I had to make sure risk was okay. Sure. That exercise became one of the biggest exercises I taught to my residents, to my interns, and used that as the core of a lot of my training. Because with safety, you found out that there are people that do care about you. And it had actually had an impact on some of those clients' lives. One came back to me later and said, I was sitting, that suicidal stuff came in, but so-and-so who played my daughter said this. And I couldn't act on this now. And that one did this. So the exercise was so emotional for the person who was actually playing the person who committed suicide, but also to the other members of the group who could relate and say, wow, I'm saying this as this person. And they felt like they were real family members. So you mean my mother would really feel a loss if I was gone? My parent would really feel this. Your kid would really feel this. And we built that into a program coming from just that exercise. And of course, being in a safe environment, I took it a lot in inpatient programs too. And it became that psychodrama that I would teach others how to run in groups. And that sparked some of how I could creatively move from the theater world into a safe space to create in group therapy theater, but it was not theater, it was real, because they felt those roles, they felt it, they connected deeply enough that it made them think again, and we would talk about it. It made them think that, oh, I can't do this, I can't, this was going to really feel it, So it covered a lot of material, and I built a course around it and everything, and it was tough to do but it had the effect I needed it to have and wanted it to have for them. Otherwise, I would have pulled back and out of it, but I knew we were safe to be able to do it. And it was powerful and remained powerful. And my residents, every once in a while, I'd get a note or something. It works, it's still working, which is really cool. So I'm like, I got it. Otherwise, that is so different than sitting there and talking about, don't hurt yourself. Other people care. They lived what it was like to hear those voices, So somehow I like that connection. Like you said, Kino, they're connected. That was one of my links to connecting those worlds. And I was like, okay, all right, now let me find other ways to do this and hopefully keep people safe. So you're right. I made a connection, and without even realizing it, I started to accept the fact that I can make this transition and make it work and make it help people.
Pat, could you say more about the program that you designed? What other types of experiences did you help create for those adults?
They would be a variety of different types of role plays, situational role plays. If they were struggling with someone, they're having boundary issues with a partner, or with someone, I would have we would play out that role. I would say, okay, this is your boyfriend. Okay, your boyfriend is and you are not relating to each other, and you're not being able to set a boundary. Let's play out the last argument that you had. What was that like? And they could feel the tension. They could feel that. And I said, can you think of anything that you can say differently? Is there anything that you can do? Can you say, let's step back a little bit, what would you have said if you were going to say something more assertive? What does assertive sound like if you are holding your boundaries? How might you stand? Might you say, I don't want to talk about this right now, we're going to talk about this later? Might you say, I need time and I need space, I need to be out of the room? So we would play it, and they said, no, let's play that. This person now, boyfriend, you be this or you be that. So that you would keep changing. You play the role, both roles. The one person would be the main character, and then and you be training them. Try this technique. Try saying it like this. And what was really interesting, even though they were playing this against a total stranger, when the emotions came up for that person, it's like, I'm really there right now. I'm really there. I'm like, okay, you see, so it's heightened right now. So if you're this heightened and you're not in the real situation, realize the emotional level that's going to allow you to feel this heightened emotion and still proceed with saying what you need to say. So let's practice it and practice it. No, I don't want to do this right now. This is not something I want or care to do. So that they could experience those feelings and still move toward what they had to say and do. If that makes any sense? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that you role play because you think that, oh, you're role playing, it's not the real person that's going to be there anyway. You put people in a situation, you put another person there, and they are still going to have those emotions, are going to be there. They're triggered enough for the person who's playing whatever that other role is to feel the real emotions. So you get, instead of talking about it and saying, well, my boyfriend's like this and he's like that, and you're going, okay, what things can you try? You've moved them to internally working on themselves enough that there you are. Breathe. Feel that? What are you feeling? There's tension in my hand. What are you feeling physiologically? What are you feeling psychologically? What are the emotions are you feeling? What is your body feeling? Now imagine yourself doing this. Can you breathe through this? Can you feel what's happening internally? Now, can you address this? Can you talk to them? Again, try this again, Can you do that? And just you walk them through experiencing, it becomes really experiential, and then trying to work out a boundary or whatever that issue is bit by bit. So it's basically that role play. It's putting them in a character, but the character just happens to be them. And then the other person gets stuff to it too, because they'll say, oh yeah, wow, I know what that feels like. Sometimes, maybe I am a bully towards my girlfriend or my friend or my whoever. Maybe sometimes I need to step back, or it's like, my God, I couldn't act like that, but I could do it for this. I can kind of see what that would be like, and that would be hard, and it would be interesting. It'd really be fascinating. I'd also work on the physical. What do you feel like? What is that like for you? Are you hovering in a chair, or how can you stand up? How are you feeling physically? What would give you more of a presence, a stance? We'd really walk through everything. And they really would get a lot out of those role plays. And it's interesting because only it's one person is real, but all the rest of them, it works. It just works. It works, you know.
I'm getting a
And
lot
group.
out of your talking about it.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you. Thank you. And the best situation of groups, I think, because the group, and you could do it with a client one-on-one. I'll be mom, and you're having a problem with mom, and she's in your space constantly, and she's not doing this, and blah blah blah. Okay, so what do you need mom to say? Whatever, you know. And then, all right, how would mom really respond? Okay, what can you say that's going to be different? So you can do it one-on-one. You definitely can. But the group tends to, it tends to get even better when you're with a group. You know, because they really are supporting each other. Wow, I can see how you move differently when you did this. As soon as you were able to say this, you know, and you stand up straight and you took a deep breath and you're able to confront her, you know, and say this, you know, it's like, okay, how do you think? You think you can try doing that the next time you deal with that real person? You think you can try, and you might not always get it right, but you now at least know what it feels like to bring yourself there, and you can keep practicing, you know. And they loved it. People just would love the role. And you would think that, oh no, I'm not doing it, because you go in there and I'm not doing this. I'm going to just sort of sit here. You can sit back and just listen to those of us. And sometimes I'll get up and I'll be the person or whatever. You know, you come talk to me and I'll be, you know, more passive. Let me show you that. Now let me show you how that would be if I was aggressive. Now let me show you how that would be if I was assertive. So, and they'd warm into it. They would. You know, I never had a problem getting people to participate. You know, because I brought the key is to be comfortable and be safe and know it's safe for them to express themselves. And kids, you know, I could do it with kids. It's different with kids. I've worked more with adults on this, but you can get kids to do some of that to some degree as well.
I'm just thinking how when someone is feeling depressed, extremely depressed, or in despair, or deep grief, or that feeling that nothing is ever going to change. I can't change, right? The circumstances can't change. Just, you know, like you're sinking in the mud deeper and deeper and deeper. I could see how there could be like a spark of life with psychodrama, right? Because you're giving an opportunity that something, the experience of something changing by doing it in the safe environment of speaking in a different way, relating in a different way, just stepping into the shoes of someone else. It's still you, but you stepped into the shoes. That could be so invigorating to get out of that place of being stuck and there's nothing I can do for it to be different. That you're given that experience is an experience of something being different.
It is. And because you do feel so stuck, and if there's nothing, you don't see any pathways. You don't. I describe it to them as a tunnel. You know, the tunnel gets smaller and smaller the deeper depressed that you get. But outside that tunnel, so I line up people on both sides of the tunnel. And I'm saying maybe you can't reach out yet. You can't, but that tunnel isn't a real solid wall. You may see that there's nothing over there at the end other than suicide, but guess what? There's a person standing right there. Now it's your job, though. You're going to have to reach out there, okay? Because that tunnel's going to get smaller and smaller the more you're depressed you got, and you're going to think there's only one way out. But look who's standing there. So I'll say, grab that one's hand. Grab that one's hand. Reach out. Grab it. Feel it. You know, and then again, create it, feel it, get the feeling. What does that feel like? And reaching out, because reaching out is the hardest darn thing in the world. You want to do the exact opposite and curl up in bed. You know.
That would make a beautiful
so
animation. What you just described would be a beautiful animation, and also a picture book as well.
Actually, you're right. It would. It really would be, because it really describes what that feels like when and how people describe it to us as therapists and everything. That feeling of it's black and it's a tunnel and it's this big when it started, but it keeps going. So, and unless you reach out, unless you seek for help, you're caving in and you're caving in and you're caving in. So if you wait till the end, it's going to be harder to reach out. then when you're here and you start feeling it
Mhm.
getting smaller.
People talk
But you're
about
right.
that there's light at the end of the tunnel, which hopefully there is. However,
Mm-hmm.
I was sharing with someone about that there's also light during the tunnel. So it would be interesting if you did an
Yes.
animation or a picture book to have that light outside of the fantasy borders, right, of the
Yes.
tunnel,
Yes.
right? That there's
Exactly.
actually light there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes
Yes.
these metaphors can be very powerful, or when we challenge the thinking, like, oh, there's only light at the end of the tunnel. No, there's light. There
Mm-hmm.
can be light while you're in the tunnel too. Okay?
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
going
And
back
that's
to the idea of safety, could you say something more about that? About creating a safe environment, an internal safe environment, or a safe environment with others? How do we do that?
it. I think some of it has to do also with our self-talk and monitoring our own self-talk. When we get stuck in this patterns, I can't do this. I can't. Nobody's going to care about this. It doesn't matter. I can't do this. I'm no good. I'm like it. Monitoring that. Hold on, hold on. What else can we tell ourselves? Who says you can't challenge yourself? I try to tell them that if you were on a stand, if you ever watch any TV shows with lawyers or stuff like that, and you're on the stand, okay, challenge yourself. What's your lawyer going to say when you can't do that? Okay, play you now. Play your lawyer. Lawyer says, okay, what do you mean you can't do that? Okay, didn't I just say you do this or whatever? Didn't you do that? And didn't you do this?
Mhm.
So, and I might experiment a little bit with them too. Okay, I didn't do that. Okay, I'm not doing anything. I'm staying home. And you go, wait a minute, didn't you just tell me you went to a knitting class? You went to a knitting class, and you talked to what, a person? Another person? You sat next to somebody. You talked to somebody. Yeah, but then I went home. Okay, but you were out. You went to that
Yeah.
class, and are you going to go to the class next week? Well, maybe I will. Okay, you going to talk to that person? Yeah, I probably will sit next to them. Oh, wow. All right. So when you can't do it, can you say, okay, I can go to class. I can go to class once a week. I can talk to somebody next to me. So you're going opposite of what they tell themselves. You're contradict. You're saying, okay, what? That's not really true. You did this, you did that. So you bring back that other side so that you change that negative thought pattern but you did this, you did that, you do this, and until they can say, yeah, I haven't been in the house all day, but I went to knitting. I went to that. I went to this. I went to a ball game. I watched a ball game on TV. I could do that. Maybe I cheered a little bit. So a few minutes I wasn't so depressed or whatever. So I think the first part of that safety is safety in our own heads of taking that negativity and turning it around to look at, didn't do that, but I did this. Did that, I did it, but I did this. So there's safety with that, I think, opening up the door a little bit more, you know. And safe places are also safe people that you want to connect with and talk to, as opposed to any of the isolation. Who's there for you? Find that person who you really can connect with. Or sometimes self-soothing. I think you mentioned self-soothing somewhere, that that ability to, what do I do when I need to self-soothe? Like, I have people create like self-soothing boxes, and inside them, and but they can keep like either that, like, or in a bedroom drawer or something like that, and it could have a candy that you like. It could have a piece of cloth that you might like to stroke, something soft or furry. It could have a squeeze ball. It could have your favorite music on the phone, so that you have the things in your life that you like, that you can go to. And if you're driving and they're getting stuck on the road, if there's some PTSD because they're worried, especially for veterans or something like that, what might be in your glove compartment box that you can pull out and you could use, so that you're finding that thing that just brings the senses in, a candle scent, an incense, or something that has, something you like, a lip gloss, a lotion. So that calming, self-soothing type thing. So when I was doing a lot of work with dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, Marshall Lenahan's work, she would use self-soothing type, techniques and everything, so where I think that those are wonderful to incorporate, having all of those things available so that you can take care of you too. There's nobody else around. And something for all the senses.
To what extent, Pat, from your knowledge of the field, the mental health field, is psychodrama utilized in psychotherapy?
I don't. Well, I cannot say enough. I haven't been in. I don't know that world, and in certain places, you're sort of stuck having to use whatever system they want you to use or programs they might want you to use. And how many people are trained in it nowadays, I think. And the other part of being trained in it is also it's not easy to do, I think. Are they getting training? I'm thinking there was a school I almost wanted to become like there was in Boston when I was living up east. There was a school that had a master's in expressive arts, creative arts, mental health, and I almost went that direction at that time. But usually, when it comes to art therapy, music therapy, theater therapy, they're always the positions that tend to get cut first from programs because they're not considered as legit as the other stuff. Yet they're more.
And yet they are. But yes, but in terms of funding for the program or insurance coverage, yeah.
Insurance coverage, right, don't exist. So I would say that you have to have somebody really passionate who wants to study that, and hopefully there's a position in a facility that will accept someone and hire you to be able to do it. And then hopefully you can have a staff that you can train to work with and learn. My role was to just really teach the interns and residents as much as I could do, and hopefully they feel comfortable because they can be more comfortable. I'm going to stick with what I know. I'm going to stick with this kind of thing.
And how wonderful that you had those skills out of your life experiences leading into being an actress, right, and a director and a producer, and then going on into mental health, and that whatever setting, organization that housed the internship and residency program, that they said, yes, please teach the students that. Because potentially they could have said,
it was
no,
good.
let's not do that. Let's do something else.
Yeah. Exactly. They could have. I'm not sure everyone knew I did it, but
we're glad you did it.
I would have like an hour. I could do something. I know I'd have the freedom of an hour to maybe not do a certain type of a therapy. That would be for me. I'm signing up to do this, or I'm signing up to do this, or I'm just adapting it to my regular group therapy practice. But some of them knew, and it really depends on the environments and what you have to do, as opposed to what you can do, but I fit it in.
Yeah. Kino, some added thoughts?
Nah, just added agreements. Pat, I agree with you on what you said about self-talk. People need to understand each time that we say something, it's a spell that we're actually putting out into the universe. So I am going to keep saying I am not good enough. I won't make it, or I'm not capable to do whatever that may be. Then, of course, that's a spell you are putting out into the universe, and you're not going to accomplish whatever that goal is. So you just need to always keep pushing yourself on with positive self-talk. I know it's easier to say, easier said than done. It's also that feeling that needs to come with it, which can also be difficult at times. This is just personal experience. The simplest things that we know what to do to live our best lives is also the hardest practices daily.
You're right. You're right. And one of the
It
things I
is.
try to do too that can help is like I will say to them, okay, if your friend told you they were feeling miserable and they can't do anything or whatever, what would you say to your friend? You say you're right, you can't do anything, you're right. No, you say your friend, of course you can. You can do this, right? And it's like, so if you're going to say that to a friend, why wouldn't you say it to you? And it's like, oh well, but I know they can't, and so I'll throw that back at them a lot. Okay, but would your friend just say, yeah,
and
you're
Kino
right.
and I started laughing when you said that, right? Because you're going to say to somebody, "Yeah, you're right. You can't do anything." That sense of humor, I think, wakes us up.
Right?
Yeah.
And humor is so important. Humor is so important. We can't lose that ability to laugh. And I'll use it a lot. I'll do jokes. I'll do whatever, anything that really allows that humor and that fun and just the laughter, because that just releases so much and just takes away some of that negativity and depression, even if it's just a little bit. You're right. Yeah. Yeah.
Make it a priority to laugh each day.
Yeah. Really. Exactly.
So, Kino and I want to thank you so much, Pat, for being with us today. Right? I feel like I've learned so much from you, and your presence is very wise and very loving. So
I appreciate that. I appreciate it
so
very
much.
much. And we should talk more about those ideas for the books for the kids there. I like that.
I have ideas,
like that.
and I work with an animator. I think it would be a beautiful animation. Yeah.
Ooh,
so we should
like
talk.
that a lot.
Okay.
Definitely.
So how can our audience learn more about your books and the other work that you've done? Your website address or other pages?
My website, yep. Unfortunately, it's Pat Black. Well, no, it's patblackgould.com, and an email is patblackgould@patblackgould.com, which was ridiculously long. And on Amazon, you can find me at Pat Black-Gould, and Instagram, Pat Black-Gould author, and then Facebook, an author account and a regular account, so that if they Google my name, they can track me down. Definitely, any one of those sites there. But you can definitely send me an email through my website as well.
Oh, wonderful. And in the description for the podcast, we'll add some of that contact information.
Wonderful.
Good.
As
Thanks
long
again,
as you're
Pat.
online, we will find you.
Yes,
it's scary.
Definitely. It's such a
scary.
pleasure.
I actually said that to someone yesterday because it was actually her birthday and I wished her. And she was like, how do you know it's my birthday? And I told her, as long as you're online, I will find you.
Exactly.
But all I ended up with saying it is scary as well, because the algorithms have gotten so strong that you could have a contact on WhatsApp and then all of a sudden, you find out about them or their birthday on Facebook without even having them as a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well.
Exactly.
Thanks again, Pat.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Take care now.
Bye.
Have a good day. Bye-bye now.